Imagine trying to launch a luxury technology brand today, but your manufacturing label is universally recognized as a punchline. You could build the most advanced hardware on Earth, but the second consumers see that origin stamp, they assume your product is garbage. That was the exact hurdle facing Japanese entrepreneurs in 1945. The country had lost a war, and its industrial base was reduced to ash and twisted metal. For millions of people, mere survival was a daily struggle. The idea of international commerce feel almost absurd. At that time, the phrase "made in Japan" meant exactly one thing to the global market: a warning. It was international shorthand for products that were cheap, fragile, and copied directly from Western designs. It was a label consumers tolerated for budget goods, never one they sought out. Akio Morita knew he could not fix this reputation through clever advertising or national pride. To prove Japanese engineering can be the best in the world, he had to execute a strategy that ignored the existing rules of global business. Over the next few decades, he would turn that impossible disadvantage into a $150 billion empire. Morita's first major business decision was walking away from a guaranteed future. He was the heir to a wealthy 14-generation family sake brewery. Instead of a secure, respected community institution, he chose to start a technology firm in a ruined city with unreliable electricity. The early days of his new company, Tokyo Tsushin Kogyo, were disastrous. Their first consumer product was an electric rice cooker meant to simplify post-war domestic life. Instead, it either burned the rice to a crisp or left it entirely raw. Up was even worse. They built an electric heating blanket that proved to be wildly unsafe and a massive fire risk. Pulled from the market almost immediately, burning through capital a fragile startup desperately needed. These back-to-back embarrassments forced a harsh realization. Morita and his engineers were brilliant, but raw technical ambition means absolutely nothing if the device fails to reliably solve a problem in a real person's home. Desperate to keep the lights on, the company pivoted to a distinctly unglamorous business, repairing broken civilian radios. During the war, Japanese authorities had deliberately cut the wires on these devices to stop citizens from hearing foreign broadcasts. Now, millions needed fixing. This survival tactic became an accidental education. Instead of drafting theoretical designs in a lab, technicians saw exactly which components wore out over time. They stood face to face with customers and listened directly to what confused, annoyed, and frustrated them about their machines. This dynamic forged the company's first major operational guideline. Building a product based solely on what engineers think is technically impressive is an inside-out approach, and it often leads to burned rice. Real value is created outside in, by starting with the user's specific friction points and working backward to the technology. Before a company can invent the future, it has to master the mundane realities of how humans actually interact with objects. Deep empathy for the user's daily experience is the strict prerequisite for any successful design. With that user-centric foundation built, Morita was ready to take a massive swing. In the early 1950s, he learned about an unproven technology emerging from American labs called the transistor. While most saw it as a minor component to make electronics slightly smaller, Morita bet the entire survival of his company on licensing the technology. To properly exploit this new hardware on a global scale, he knew the unwieldy name Tokyo Tsushin Kogyo had to go. He needed a brand that sounded modern, energetic, and borderless. He combined the Latin word for sound with the concept of youth, creating Sony. The name intentionally carried no cultural weight, severing the company from the regional stigma of post-war manufacturing. The gamble paid off. Sony released the world's first commercially successful pocket-sized transistor radio. For the very first time, audio was completely untethered from the living room wall. People could carry news and music with them wherever they went. Morita applied this exact same logic a few years later to television. Rather than making small tweaks to the flawed designs of competitors, he pushed Sony to near bankruptcy to rebuild color TV from the ground up. The resulting Trinitron offered an image so bright and sharp that consumers chose it instinctively. Competing on incremental 10% improvements condemns a brand to forever chase the market leader. To dominate an industry, the goal isn't to play by the existing rules, it's to completely rewrite them. By the late 1970s, the prevailing logic in the tech industry was absolute. Adding more buttons, more functions, and more capabilities automatically resulted in a better product. Portable cassette players existed, but they were heavy, bulky devices designed for recording and playing audio out loud. Morita took a fiercely contrarian approach. He ordered his engineers to strip the core recording function out of their tape players entirely. He paired this simplified, playback-only machine with a set of newly designed lightweight headphones. The internal pushback was intense. Sales teams and senior executives were convinced it would fail. Extensive market research insisted that music was a shared, communal experience, and consumers would never buy a crippled device that isolated them from their surroundings. But Morita ignored the prevailing logic because he was designing for psychology. Through his relentless observation of real people, he noticed commuters wanted stimulation without the obligation of interacting with others. The Walkman was a tool that allowed individuals to carry their own private emotional environment through a crowded city. This is the vital distinction between a good company and a legendary one. Good companies react efficiently to explicit customer demands. Legendary companies anticipate the latent, unarticulated desires of the public and give them physical form. That instinct for identifying latent demand built the modern version of Sony. Today, it is an $86 billion global powerhouse that controls an ecosystem spanning premium hardware, interactive gaming, music, and film. Akio Morita did not erase the Made in Japan stigma by complaining about it or launching PR campaigns. He forced his products to carry the argument. By consistently delivering undeniable quality, he proved that a reputation is not fixed. It is built patiently through one product and one standard at a time. This approach begins by stripping away the excess features that clutter a product, focusing exclusively on the one core emotional need the user is trying to solve. Positioning must also look forward, branding for the global market it intends to reach. Finally, every technical failure is converted into design intelligence. Instead of burying mistakes, they are examined to understand how real people interact with technology in the real world. Look around your own industry. What is one overcomplicated, feature-bloated product that is begging for this kind of reset? Let me know your target in the comments, and subscribe for more breakdowns on the strategies that build empires.